Ever wondered why Greece, the heir of Byzantium, didn't reclaim Constantinople after World War I? It's a story of broken promises, shifting alliances, and the birth of a new nation. Let's dive into one of modern history's biggest what-ifs. At the start of World War I, the great powers were already carving up the sick man of Europe, the Ottoman Empire. For centuries, Russia had dreamed of controlling Constantinople. It was a key part of their geopolitical strategy. A warm water port that would give their Black Sea fleet year-round access to the Mediterranean. It also held deep religious significance for the Russian Orthodox Church, which saw itself as the successor to the Byzantine Empire. So, when the war began, the Entente powers Britain and France made a secret deal to keep Russia fighting on the Eastern Front. They promised them Constantinople and the Turkish Straits. It was a massive prize, the culmination of centuries of Russian ambition. This was the famous Constantinople Agreement of 1915. For a moment, it seemed the city's fate was sealed, but history, as it often does, took an unexpected turn. In 1917, the Russian Revolution erupted. The Tsar was overthrown, and the Bolsheviks, led by Lenin, seized power. One of their first acts was to pull Russia out of the war. They renounced all the secret treaties of the old Tsarist regime, including the one that promised them Constantinople. They published these agreements, exposing the imperial ambitions of the Entente powers to the world. With Russia now out of the picture, the question of Constantinople's future was thrown wide open. The biggest contender for the city was suddenly gone, and the remaining allies had a major strategic asset to figure out what to do with. With the Ottomans defeated in 1918, the victorious allies gathered to redraw the map of the Middle East. The result was the Treaty of Sèvres in 1920. This treaty was incredibly harsh on the Ottoman Empire, carving it up into zones of influence for Britain, France, and Italy. Greece was also a major beneficiary, gaining territory in Thrace and a mandate over the city of Smyrna, now Izmir. But what about the ultimate prize, Constantinople? The treaty proposed a unique solution. The city, along with the strategic straits of the Bosphorus and Dardanelles, would become an internationalized zone. It would be demilitarized and governed by an international commission. On the surface, this sounded like a fair compromise. No single power would have control. But in reality, who would be the dominant force in this international zone? The answer was Great Britain. The British Royal Navy was the most powerful naval force in the world, and they had a significant military presence in the region. By internationalizing the city, Britain could effectively control this vital waterway without officially annexing it. They could ensure that trade routes to India and the East remained secure, and they could keep any potential rivals from bottling them out of the Black Sea. For the British Empire, controlling Constantinople was a strategic imperative, a linchpin in their global network. Giving it to anyone else, especially a smaller, less reliable nation, was simply not on the table. This brings us to Greece's position. The Greeks had a powerful historical and emotional claim to Constantinople. It was the heart of the Byzantine Empire, the center of Greek Orthodox Christianity for 1,000 years. This idea, known as the Megali Idea or the Great Idea, was a dream of reuniting all Greek-speaking peoples into a single state with Constantinople as its capital. When Greece joined the war on the side of the Entente, they did so with this dream in mind. Their prime minister, Eleftherios Venizelos, was a brilliant statesman who lobbied hard in the post-war conferences, arguing that Greece was the rightful heir to the city. However, the great powers, particularly Britain, saw things differently. To them, Greece was a minor player, a reluctant ally that had only joined the war late. In 1917, after a period of intense internal division, they didn't see Greece as a power capable of holding and managing a city of such immense strategic importance. Giving them Constantinople would be like giving the keys to a fortress to a junior partner. Furthermore, while they paid lip service to Greece's classical heritage, they didn't fully buy into the idea that modern Greece was the direct successor to the Byzantine Empire, entitled to its former capital. The historical claim was seen as more of a romantic notion than a serious geopolitical argument. The Allies were playing a game of power politics, and in that game, Britain's strategic interests far outweighed Greece's historical dreams. While the diplomats in Paris were drawing lines on maps, a powerful force was gathering within Anatolia. The Treaty of Sèvres was seen by Turkish nationalists as a national humiliation, a death sentence for their homeland. They weren't going to accept the dismemberment of their country. A war hero, a brilliant military commander named Mustafa Kemal, began to organize a resistance movement. He rejected the authority of the Sultan's government in Constantinople, which had accepted the treaty, and established a rival government in Ankara. This was the start of the Turkish War of Independence. Mustafa Kemal's Turkish national movement was not just a small band of rebels. It was a popular, determined, and highly effective military force. They began to fight back against the foreign powers occupying their land. The Greek army, which had landed in Smyrna with Allied encouragement to enforce the treaty, soon found itself in a full-scale war against Kemal's forces. At the same time, Turkish nationalist forces also fought and defeated the French in the south, forcing them to sign a separate peace and withdraw. Kemal was methodically dismantling the Treaty of Sèvres on the battlefield, proving that it was a document that could not be enforced. The Allied plan to partition Anatolia was collapsing in the face of fierce and organized resistance. By 1922, the situation had reached a tipping point. The Turkish nationalist armies, under Kemal's command, had pushed the Greek forces back to the coast. The climactic event was the Great Offensive in August 1922, which resulted in a decisive Turkish victory and the recapture of Smyrna. The Greek army was shattered. Following this, Kemal's victorious army marched north towards the international zone at Constantinople and the Straits. This set up a direct confrontation with the British troops stationed there. This was the Chanak crisis. Britain's Prime Minister, David Lloyd George, was a hawk who wanted to go to war to defend the Straits, but he found himself isolated. The British public was exhausted by war. They had just endured the horrors of World War I and had no appetite for another conflict, especially for a cause that seemed so distant. Britain's dominions, like Canada and Australia, refused to commit troops. Their other major ally, France, had already made peace with Kemal and had no intention of fighting him again. Lloyd George was facing a stark choice: fight a new war against a determined Turkish army, alone or back down. Faced with war weariness at home and a lack of support from his allies, Lloyd George had no choice. The British cabinet overruled him, and they agreed to negotiate. The Allies abandoned the Treaty of Sèvres and their plans for an internationalized Constantinople. An armistice was signed, and a new conference was called in Lausanne, Switzerland. The resulting Treaty of Lausanne in 1923 was a complete reversal of Sèvres. It recognized the full sovereignty of the new Republic of Turkey, with Mustafa Kemal, now known as Atatürk, as its leader. All foreign troops were to withdraw. Critically, the treaty confirmed that Constantinople, now officially and internationally known by its Turkish name, Istanbul, along with Eastern Thrace and the Straits, would be part of the new Turkish nation. The dream of an international zone under British influence was dead. The Greek Megali Idea was shattered. Instead of becoming a partitioned state, Turkey emerged from the ashes of the Ottoman Empire as a unified, independent republic, with its most iconic city Mudanka secured firmly within its borders. So, in the end, it wasn't just one reason Greece didn't get Constantinople. It was a cascade of events. Russia's revolutionary exit, Britain's overriding self-interest, a lack of faith in Greece's power, and most decisively, the success of the Turkish national movement. Mustafa Kemal Atatürk and his followers literally fought for their nation's survival and, in doing so, redrew the map that the Allied powers had so confidently created. The fate of the city wasn't decided in the gilded halls of Paris, but on the battlefields of Anatolia. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this piece of history as fascinating as I do, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more deep dives into the stories that shaped our world. See you next time.